All right, I'm gonna do this quick fucking intro, and then we'll just get straight into the game. All right.
Are you gonna edit this?
Yeah. Hey
Well,
guys.
actually,
Fuck his back. What do you need?
all good. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey guys, Lucas here from All Black Juggernaut. Thanks for checking us out. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Castbox. Let's get to the video on the Game 2 Bledisloe review. I'm doing it with my mates, James, commonly called Spank, and my cousin Johnny. Hey, what's up, guys? How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. What did you think of the game? First and foremost, 27-7. Was it? Yeah, it was 27-7 to the All Blacks. Kicked it up a notch from last week. How did you feel? How did you feel sort of when they were running out and knowing that the pressure was on?
To be honest, this is the first game I think against Australia where I've legitimately felt like a few more nerves, probably for a long time. I was like, I kind of had that feeling in my stomach, like it was almost before the All Blacks versus England semi-final, and was kind of thinking there's a lot of pressure on this because it's our second game. Typically we play a lot of not a lot of, but a few games against tier 2 nations or something to get warmed up. We haven't had that. We're straight in. We struggled in the first test, and the first test, even after the 2 tier nations are, even the first sort of test against the tier 1 nation, they could still be a little bit scrappy. And I thought, the first one was a bit worrying, and this is the first time I thought, man, if we, Foster's in, is this gonna be in Eden Park, our first loss, and Dave Rennie's in there. There's a lot of things that were going on, and I was like, man, I was a bit more nervous about this one going into it.
Me too, 100%. I was real nervous. I do recall the England semi-final last year in the World Cup, and we both watched it at Brian's house.
Yeah.
And I think being in that house sort of kicked up the nerves. So I was already nervous before I flew to New Zealand, and then as soon as I got there, I was like, wow, like we could actually lose this game, and it's going to ruin, a really cool trip or whatever. Like it was what it meant to me, not what it meant to the nation or the team. This time around, I was feel like we could legitimately lose this game, and we shouldn't, but we could. They sort of caught us with our pants down last week, and yeah, they're a lot better team than people give them credit for. Dave Rennie's doing a pretty good job over there. Yeah,
they're lucky to have Dave Rennie. I heard that Graham Henry was that he came out and said it should have been Rennie instead of Foster.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times, straight out of his mouth too. And he was on the selection panel, wasn't he?
He was on the selection panel, and I don't know I'm not sure if he voted for Robinson or what. I think him and Robinson are pretty close. Now, anyway.
I don't think Robinson. Like, if you're talking about the best possible coaches that could have coached our team, realistically, you're looking at Dave Rennie and Warren Gatland, and neither of those two. Not that they didn't want the job, but they probably weren't prepared to take it at that time.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with that. I think Rennie would have been the number one option for that, and I think but I think Robertson probably was a close number 2. And I think if once he didn't get Rennie, I think he was probably going for Robertson maybe. But yeah, they're lucky to have Rennie, and I think that's going to make a massive difference. But it also creates a lot more excitement. I was telling because I was actually at Brian's for this one as well.
Okay.
And we were talking about it, and I was thinking that I think it's going to be like they're just lucky to have him, and I think because of that they'll play a little bit better, and it creates that. It's almost good to have that rivalry back. I was telling him because it hasn't been there for a long time, and it's good because especially with the Springboks pulling out and probably looking to head north.
Argentina's still going to come. Like they've had their own problems too. They haven't pulled out yet, but I heard that
I
two
don't think they're pulling out.
players and their management staff actually had COVID, and you know it's a little bit all over the place for them. I'm not sure if they'll even come. They should. I hope they do. I mean, it's not like this country's not.
So, do you think they'll just? Do you think with the Springboks pulling out? I haven't heard anything actually, but do you think they're going to look at doing a Tri-Nations instead?
They haven't said because since the Springboks have pulled out, not a lot has happened. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I would like to see them come, even just for the development of their game, like just.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like I was thinking, so one of the points I've got up on the whiteboard is the lack of competition for other nations, especially tier 2 and 3 nations, going to sort of, set them further back than they normally would be. Like obviously there's a pretty big gap and disparity between the tier 1 nations and the tier 2 nations, and even the top flight tier 1 nations are quite a bit better than the other tier 1 nations. So if they're not playing and they take 6, 8, 12, 15, 18 months off real competition rugby and just play a little bit amongst themselves, they could be a long way behind by the time they come back into international rugby, which is, it could set them back 10 or 15 years. Think of
it's a massive shame because they've just spent so many years building these tier 2 nations up, and like Japan and that World Cup, and they were really improving, and Argentina and were like they came from nothing, they came from nowhere, and then suddenly they're beating the Springboks. They're almost beating the All Blacks, crazy. And so they get to this point, and then COVID hits, and I think especially over in Europe, all over Europe, like everyone's in lockdown and there's no rugby being played, and so New Zealand, Australia have the advantage of they're playing with full crowds.
Amongst ourselves.
What's that?
At least we're playing amongst ourselves.
Yeah, and we're still having New Zealand tournaments, and they're not playing any rugby. And so, and how long is that going to be? Like, I don't know. I have no idea. It could be years. And if it's years, if it's a year, if it's 2 years, yeah, I think that'll set them back a long way. They can be training, but that's nothing when you're playing. And then you've got to get into a game.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Shame.
Let's get to this game. Like, so for the purposes of Bledisloe 2, where was the game won for New Zealand?
Where was the game won? I think
last week.
Yeah, I think it was a lot different from last week. I think there were two big moments in the game where I don't know if they were I don't know if they were. It was that whether if it sort of would have affected why they won or whatever. But Richie Mo'unga stopping the try in the corner. And he stopped that try, and I think it was Anton Leonard-Brown that kind of helped them out in the end. He came over and protected the ball so he didn't get it down. That was a massive moment in the game because that would have put it to 20. That would have put it within like 5 points, I think, at that stage. I'm sure it was definitely within a converted try, and it was like wow, that's if they get this, they're right back in this game. They didn't get it. And then the All Blacks scored, I think it was the Caleb Clark run. But then they scored that try and it pushed them like sort of to 20 to 7, I think it was at that point. And that was a massive moment. And then also the double movement against Aussie to deny that try when he got up to his knee and then didn't score that. Like that was lucky that he got to his knee because otherwise it would have. There's a new rule where you can, if it's sort of in another movement, you can do it, but because he got up to his knee, they denied that try. And I think those were two big plays that stopped 14 points potentially. And I think those, for me, that's kind of where it changed, and also in the second half where they just sort of ramped up the intensity and they just, and I think that there was when Caleb Clark did that run, is like, man, that was such a big turning point. That was kind of right in the middle of after they'd started it started putting some passes together and getting a few more players to the breakdown. And I think it really that there was a few plays like that really little couple little kicks through by Barrett, lots of little with those early breaks and chips that he was doing. Like there was a few players that I think there was a couple of big plays that really ramped up the intensity for them. That they thought, man, we got this, and yeah, they stepped it
How
up.
good was the having Bowden Barrett back, just with that crazy X factor at the back? Not that Mackenzie doesn't have X factor, but he's so much safer than anyone else that we have. Like, did you like the safety of having Barrett at the back?
Yeah, I think I've almost underrated Barrett. Like I kind of thought, oh, maybe like he's so good, but he goes away or he has a break, and then you forget like how good he is, like how little quick things, and he's not that big, but he's just, man, like with those early breaks, even at the time when we looked like we were kind of not gelling and not putting things together, he just stood out, and he had these breaks where he break through and he'd break a few tackles and he'd make 30 or 40 quick meters, and you think, well, here we go. And then a couple of handling errors let us down, but he kept us in there. He was the one that started like the fire, I think, in that team, making these breaks and showing them that, hey, this is Eden Park and we can do this. And I think, it was massive having him in our team. And I think he probably got overlooked by a lot of moments that happened in the game. Like, Leonard Brown had an amazing game. Savia played well. Kane had a really good game, like tackles and work rate. There was so many big players in this game that I think Barrett kind of wasn't like, usually he gets singled out, but I think he just slots into those players, because there was a lot of players that had a really good game. Even if it was a lot of good moments anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I had never seen this guy, Alex Hodgman, play before.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen too many of the Blues games, and if I did see him play, I didn't notice him. Sorry, Alex, if you're watching. But certainly know him now because he came on early with Joe Moody knocking himself out on old mate's hip. And he did not look out of place in international rugby, even though I'd never heard of him. I had a look at it. I had a look at sort of what the prognosis on him was, and it seemed like he was a ball running, sort of get around the field Andrew Hoare type prop, even though Andrew Hoare was a hooker. But the more mobile type prop, and not so big on scrummaging, and more for the modern game. But he was good at scrum time. I saw him absolutely destroy Tani Alatupo in one scrum. And he got him down, maybe bored in a little, but it is what it is when you're scrummaging. It's been a long time since I've been in a scrum, so it looked like
we needed that though. We needed that. There was a couple of other moments where we'd been pushed down in the scrum, and we were dragging the scrum down, yes. And we were getting penalised for it. And I think when Alex Hodgson came on it in the scrum, man, that scrum just instantly turned, and it was like they drove Australia right off the scrum, and there was a couple of big scrums from him, and man, he had a really, really good debut.
Yeah.
And another humble player to come into the squad, because when they interviewed him in a few of the interviews, I think all the first thing he was saying in all the interviews was after they were trying to compliment him and how good his game was, and first thing he would always say is, I'm there because of an unfortunate incident with Moody, and I just wish him and his I'm thinking of his family, and I hope he gets better as soon as he can. And like, he's just a really humble player, and I think he's going to be a really good I think one to watch for the future. Like I think he'll come through like a really like he'll be a standout player for them.
Hey.
Brian,
can you hear me?
Yeah, bro.
Hey, I've got to take a work call. Are you recording now?
Yeah, that's all right, though. It's going to get
I've
edited.
got to take a work call.
Take the call.
How do you pause this so I don't lose this?
You make.
I don't know. Just come back and admit you.
Hey, I'll be like 1 minute.
No worries.
Hey, Jock. Hey, I'll come back in a sec.
Okay.
Hopefully I don't lose it now that I'm in.
Oh no.
Got to take a work call. That's what happens when you have a work phone. What else I got? Oh, where did Australia lose the game?
Where did Australia?
It was just as high this week as it was last week, but
They made so many more errors. They made a lot of handling errors. Cora Betty was shocking. Like, he scored a try. I think he actually even scored 2 tries. Like, I honestly think he's
if they held up would have been his second try too. He was the person held up by more.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So he scored a try, and he had some. He's a strong winger. And he's fast. He's very quick. But man, he made a lot of handling errors. Like, yeah, he just couldn't hold on to the ball, and there was a lot of turnover from that.
Like he just dropped it out of nowhere.
Yeah, there was one year where he was in the midfield and they just passed it straight to him, and he just, I don't know what happened, but he just
I saw
it.
He was running at someone small. I can't remember who it was. It might have been I think it might have been Mackenzie if it was late in the game. But he looked up, saw someone that he wanted to run at, and then he just kind of got the deer in headlights kind of look, and then just bumbled it. No, spilt his lollies. It was so gross. But they would build pressure for not long periods, but 6, 7, 8 phases, and then just cough the ball up. And then by that time, New Zealand's so good at counter-attacking. It's not that we scored from the counter-attack, but we would get 20 or 30 meters upfield, and they're already going backwards. Applying pressure like that, the All Blacks are the best team at it. So yeah, I think 100% the missed tackles and the handling errors were the massive thing. The big difference between Australia's game last week and this week.
I think if we're gonna I think the All Blacks obviously had they stepped it up from last week. They had an amazing return after. But do you think there was still if we're gonna pick it sort of more apart? I think there was still a number of handling errors. I think they need to work on, and as well in the start where it kind of was still a bit scrappy, and even towards the end when they started sort of gaining momentum, they were still making quite more handling errors, I would say, than normal.
Yep.
And I think they probably need to do that. And I was going to ask you about what you think of the Aaron Smith up and unders. I know sometimes they're effective. They can be effective, but I feel like when you've stepped outside the 22, you can't kick it out. So you put up and under, and it goes sort of 20 meters, and then I just didn't feel like we had for a lot of the kicks. I won't say the majority of the kicks, but I'd say a lot of the kicks we didn't have. It didn't seem like we had the chases.
No.
And they sort of.
Jordy Barrett doesn't seem to like chasing. And one of my points here, this is a kind of an after the game point, but I thought this last week. And because when Jordy Barrett scored his try last week, and he had a open run to the line, so he's obviously going to score it anyway. But Korobedi turns and he's chasing him, and he's gunning him down, and he almost caught him. He wasn't actually going to catch him, but he almost caught him. And I thought to myself, fucking hell, is Jordy Barrett the slowest winger we've had in the last 25 years? I
was watching the game with Brian.
Wingers, and he's just really ho hum.
Brian made the exact same comment as soon as it happened, and I didn't really know. I didn't really pick up on it honestly. But he said, "This is crazy." He got burned. Barrett got burned by him, and then they were saying if maybe someone like Sevu Reece wouldn't, I don't think he would have got burned like that. Yeah. He probably would have been a bit faster, I'd say. He would have got to the ball.
You have to wonder why he's so slow. Not so slow. I'm not calling him slow. He's faster than every person on this call. But just when you're at that level, And we've been blessed. Like New Zealand has been blessed with wingers.
Yeah.
In the last 20 to 30 years, and even further than that. Like my first favorite player was Terry Wright, and he was not the biggest man. But he was fast. You know, if you're watching rugby in the
Terry Wright was probably 70 kilos soaking wet.
Yeah, for sure. Didn't have a sidestep. Like these are before the days of Christian Cullen and Jeff Wilson. But
yeah.
you know, like we've been blessed with lots of very athletic, very fast wingers. The Doug Howletts, the Joe Rokothokos, the Sitivini Sivivas, Julian Sarviers. You know, a lot of them are sprint champions. And Geordie Barrett's he's not in that mold. He's skillful. I wouldn't trust him with the game on the line, but he's not fast enough to be one of our wingers. I don't know.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd say about the team is that I think there's also, and again, super picky, but like about working on the rush defense, because it seems like a lot of the time we were hanging back, waiting for them to come to us and doing more like lateral defense, sort of scooting across, rather than Australia, where there was majority of the game, they were rushing up, and it created a couple of gaps occasionally, but man, they were coming up fast, and it was kind of knocking us back, I think, and especially in the first sort of 20 or 30 minutes. And I think we should have probably needed to, might be, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not coach, but it was something like
quite a bit of success. Sorry.
No, that was it.
I think that Australia had seen that South Africa had a fair bit of success with the rush defense against us, where we played the umbrella defense a lot more, so that we can sort of push them towards the outsides, or either keep them in the middle or push them towards the sideline, like not let them play where they want to play. And if they're trying to keep us in the middle of the field to stay away from all of our, you know, wide weapons, then it's a good tactic. But we just have to find ways to get around it, even if it's something like a pass or something.
Yeah, I think obviously there was pretty those criticisms were super picky, because it is the second game in probably a year for these players, especially there's a lot of new players. They're all playing together in the same team environment for the first time, adjusting to a much faster level of play, totally different game, and probably minor 10, and that they've been playing. And I think it was the positive was it was certainly a much better overall performance than last week, and I'm sure they'll take a lot of positives out of the game, like Caleb Clark, Alex Hodgson, who we talked about, a lot of good performances from the players like Leonard Brown, Caleb Clark, Artie Savia, Sam Kane. There was a lot of players that stood out in this game, which is a good sign. 100%.
Pretty good when he came in too.
What's that?
I thought Umanga Jensen, you know, he had some good touches, and
Umanga Jensen played well. Yeah. Yep.
Shame
he had a good debut.
Yeah. When you were talking before about
shame he got a concussion, but you know.
You're talking before about the Aaron Smith box kicks. Would you like to see them deeper, or would you like to see them, instead of that, just, you know, run that ball out, sort of have a better exit strategy? Like obviously they practice.
Personally, I would say the run. Like I just think they would get. I mean, I get getting out of that, getting out and you know, playing for possession or whatever, or getting yourself out of the 22. But when you're like 1 meter outside the 22, you can't kick it out. And you do a bomb 20 meters down the field, the chasers really, like, even with the chasers there, we were winning those maybe one or two out of 10. Like we weren't winning a lot of those balls back. And like in the past, we've had pretty good success rate with those. Like Ben Smith was a good example of a up and under chaser, and we just don't have those chasers coming in on the up and unders. And I just think we when we kick it 20 meters down the field, they're back where we kicked it within 2 or 3 phases, and it just seems wasted possession where like maybe you kick it deeper or try to run pass it back to the. If you're going to do that, pass it back to maybe someone with a large boot on them, Geordie or something, and you can't kick it out in the full, but you can hoof it downfield and maybe try and get a mistake down there end rather than just giving it back to them 20 metres away.
Yeah, or at least fucking 40 metres upfield. And your defense.
Yeah, or try to run it, or try to do something and pick and drive, or make some phases, put some phases together. Whenever the All Blacks hold the ball, they're way more dangerous than when they kick it away like that. I think personally, that's just a.
I think we really struggle to hold on to the ball, but for a large amount of phases, they're really impatient. You can't moan too much. Hey, we won in the weekend.
Yep.
Against South Africa or England, I don't think the way we played would actually come off. I don't know. We struggled to have the ability. Yeah, obviously it came off in phases and we won.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you I started rewatching again, and very rarely did we string together. I could be wrong. Maybe the stats the stats might show something different, but it didn't feel like we pulled together many long, maybe 10 to 12 phases. Wasn't long before we kicked it or we dropped the ball. Obviously we won and there was good patches, but I didn't think it was a great performance, and obviously that's been negative, but we had really good patches of about 5 to 10 minute bursts.
Yeah, and also it was more or less it was our defense that won it. Towards the end of the game, especially in sort of the 70-minute plus range, they had a lot of ball. We were driving them backwards, and I made the comment to my wife, they've just run out of ideas. It's not that our defense is awesome and we're smashing them off the ball. We weren't. They just couldn't get around us. They couldn't get through us, and they ran out of ideas. So they ended up kicking it back to us. It was just like one of those things where a better team will do this better, and they'll have a better plan. It's not that we smashed them off the park. It's that they didn't quite come with it, and we just sort of just pulled away from them in the end. Do you think it's too long before the next game? I mean, is 3 weeks too long? I'm not sure if they have to go into full isolation, do they?
Where's the next game?
Next game's here in Brisbane.
I thought it was 2 weeks away. Is it 3 weeks?
It's November the 7th. So yeah, 2 weeks from this Saturday.
They would have to go. They would if they're playing in. I'm surprised they don't move the game, to be honest, because I think they've opened up the bubble between New Zealand and New South Wales.
No, they've opened it here. So it's opened up in Queensland.
So they don't have to quarantine.
That is joke.
So they come here and they play that game, and then they go straight to Sydney and play the game there.
Oh, okay. So they don't have to quarantine.
I'm not sure. They did. I heard. I'm not sure if this went through, but they did request. They did make a special request. I think it was Jacinda who had made a special request on all of the teams' behalf, because their team would have to do it too, to not have that isolation occur. But I don't think that would be flying very far. And I don't know how far that went either.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they do have to do it, and they sort of are able to get some flexibility with it and can still train and do things out in there as they normally would, or whether it's going to affect them, having a couple of weeks out and sort of regathering back in a couple of weeks rather than the following week.
Yeah, do you think they would be allowed to train while they're in isolation?
Well, I know that the who was it?
Surely.
I think Argentina. Aren't some of them already there in Australia? Argentina. I'm pretty sure that the Argentinian team are already in Australia, and they were training, but they were training in their own. They kind of organised a field where they could stay in their own bubble, and sort of, I don't know if it was an indoor sort of a training field, but they were still managing to do some sort of training like on a, on an effective training ground. So I'm sure there'll be something where they can do something up for them, and otherwise,
have to be, or else the tournament wouldn't be able to go ahead. I'm pretty sure what the deal is that each team gets to isolate with their own field, and that's their training facility for 14 days. I mean, it'd be ridiculous if they couldn't.
Yeah, they've got to come in completely cold.
Yeah. No, I think they'll still be training, but it'll be interesting to see if they can still come in with a, like when you're coming off a good week like that and you're back into it the following week. I think it's probably easier than, going back to training for a couple of weeks and then back into it, and then you sort of have to make sure you've got everything right and get it squared away again for the team, for the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if the first 15, first quarter of the sort of for the game, 15, 20 minutes is a little bit similar to this game where it was a bit more scrappy, still trying to figure out each other's combinations, and then they started getting that improved towards the end of the game. But it might be hard just to get back into that straight out with sort of 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out, whatever it is. And so it might be. I would expect it to be a little bit more scrappy, but at least the first 20 minutes. But hopefully, I'm wrong.
You guys think it took us too long to get into this game? Like 10-7 at halftime is okay. That's not about the score, but just.
I think it would be kind of too critical to say because it's like for me, I think at the time I probably would have said it took us too long. We should, we still made a lot of handling errors and everything like that. But coming off with a day's break and kind of reflecting on the game, you can kind of have more of a bit of sympathy and say, well, they were, this is only the second game of the year. Usually it's against a tier 2 nation. They still look like this against in the past. They've looked like this in the second game of the season against teams like Samoa or Fiji or something. Maybe not for Fiji, but Samoa or Tonga, and they still win pretty handily, but they still make a lot of errors. And now we're straight into Australia, so I think they're probably starting off like they normally do. It's just a much bigger game you've got a lot shorter learning curve.
For sure. What do you think of Caleb Clark, Brian?
I think he's pretty good. I think I think you see lifespans of wingers nowadays not very long. Like you look at the rotation of wingers. Besides Ben Smith, who was rotated between wing and fullback, they don't last long. So I'm just kind of wondering. Everyone's comparing him to Lomu. He actually reminds me more of Matanonu. Just the way he runs. I would like to. I think the next 2 or 3 years, he's obviously a find. I think the next 2 or 3 years, he should stick to the wing. I think at some point in time, I can see him as a second five. I think they should actually try to mould him into a midfielder because he's
a battering ram.
Yeah, I think he's that second five that they're missing since Nonu's left, and they've tried to replace the gap with. You look at our midfield; it's fucking shambles. Like the last.
The next point on my whiteboard.
Oh, is that
our midfield weak?
Yeah. The last since the last World Cup, 2015 World Cup, sorry. We had Nonu and Conrad Smith there for 8 years, I think it was, 2008 to 2015. Yep. And since then, I don't know the stats, but I'm pretty sure that you probably find that the best we've ever had a consecutive midfield pairing together play the same game together is maybe 2 or 3 games at best. And it's a shambles. And, hey, I'm not saying Goodhue didn't play well on the weekend. Leonard Brown played well on the weekend, but I think as a combination, we don't have that anymore. And I think it's probably because they're searching, trying to find this replacement for Nonu that's never come along. I think he's it. It's obviously a big call now. The guy's a winger. But I think they should think about that because at some point in time, for whatever reason, nowadays wingers don't seem to last long. I don't know if they lose speed or other teams just catch up and they get someone new in there. I don't know what it is. But I think to lengthen his life, his lifespan of a All Black winger, he's probably the type that might lose speed later on in 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure. So I think he could also fill the gap at second five, and he could be a really, really long-term All Black. So, but I thought he was awesome. It was good to see. He was the difference between us winning, by 20 points and it being another grind out where it could have been 5 to 7 points in it.
Yeah. All right. He certainly looks like his dad. But
hard.
He's the mold of a very strong young player. That they never used to be like that. So you're saying about the shelf life on wingers, and we know that the All Black try scoring record is held by Doug Howlett. Not a fan of Doug Howlett, never was, never will be, and I want someone else to take that record. Initially, because he took it off Christian Cullen, and then, it never went anywhere else. So we thought it was going to be Joe Rokithoko who was going to take it, and then we thought it was Rico who was going to take it. And that's not to say that
we thought it was going to be Severe. I think Severe got the closest to it.
And then he leaves when he's 25, 26, 27 years old.
And
the shelf life on him wasn't that much longer anyway. He probably wasn't going to get there, but unless he scores, 5 tries against Fiji and then another 6 or 7 against Tonga.
Yeah.
I want someone else.
Clark's got good defense too in the midfield. When I think Rico's a good player, but I think he struggles to a couple of times he's made bad defensive reads, and I think he's like Clark seems to be, and I know everyone's hyping him up, and it's a second test and like his first real test, and first one he got sort of 20 minutes, so he hasn't had much game time for the All Blacks, so it's probably too early, but he looks solid like defensively, and I think he'll be a really good, like he's a brick wall, and when you're running in, and he's good, he's strong, and he's physical, and he runs like Artie, where he just like he's got 3 players on him, he's trying to drag him down the field, and I think it's someone good, and I didn't even really think about having him in the midfield, but maybe he wouldn't be that bad. Like he'd be a good combination, especially with Leonard Brown. Leonard Brown is playing so good. Like he's underrated.
He plays well above his weight, Leonard Brown. There's not much of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah, he kind of needed that stability in the weekend.
Definitely.
You see a bit more leadership to the back line. He looked more comfortable in defence. Not sure about Rico in the midfield.
I just don't think
I'm not sure about Rico at all, to be honest. This isn't even the one-handed try thing. Like, I just don't know. He doesn't fill you with confidence. It's a World Cup semi-final when you got, Rico in the centre. There's something unsettling about that.
It's a key position too. Like it not only does it unlock the midfield, it also unlocks the people outside him. So. Yeah, hard to say because he's been a winger so long. It feels like he wants to score those tries.
Yeah,
it's not the role of a centre. The role of a centre is to set up those tries for someone else. And I want to see him be more of a ball player and read the game a little better. Like Conrad Smith, not much of him, but he used to read the game better than any centre we had in a long time. Probably since Frank Bunce.
Yeah.
We're talking about players who need to see things happening before they happen.
And
where are they attacking us? What's going to happen next? Do I need to turn and chase? Do I need to tell my people what's going on? And he's not quite vocal enough. He's not quite, and that's not to say that he couldn't develop all those aspects of his game. So I'm interested to see where he goes with it. I would like to see him get stuck back on the wing for a little while. Just to develop those skills a little more.
It's interesting because I saw an interview with Frank Bunce, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago, just talking about, I think they were reviewing the All Black Springbok tour South Africa back in 1996 when they won the Test series over there for the first time. And they're talking about, I think Frank Bunce scored a try from about 60-odd metres, and they were just talking around how his development got him to that stage, and said it takes a long time for a centre just to walk in and be able to just see everything. And, he's obviously speaking like someone that obviously knows what he's talking about. But, according to Frank Bunce, you need to be in that position for quite a while in order and then all of a sudden at some point, the field just opens up. Like your mind just opens up to the field and you can see a lot more things. And you wouldn't think Rico is at that stage yet or even close. I guess someone like Leonard Brown probably is. He's had a bit of experience in the midfield now, so they'll have to make a decision there, obviously, on what they're going to do. And I think they should make a decision and just stick with it. I think they need a midfield combo again and not this continual rotation of, the midfield in and out. And I just hope Foster's just not going down the same track as Hansen. To me, Hansen was a failure for the past, 2 years of his reign. And I think you saw that at the World Cup, obviously, but it wasn't just the World Cup. It was the Lions. We lost twice to the Irish. So I just hope Hansen's got something new. And at the moment, I'm not sure. They won. They won. That's good. They had a draw. But it still seems to be a lot of the same shit. And I want to see them starting to lock in combinations again, because the rotation thing, I don't think works.
What about Laumapi?
What happened to him? Is he injured?
I don't know. Because I was going to ask, where's the rest of our midfield prospects? Like, who do we have that could come through? Like, Umaga Jensen, I hadn't seen him play much, and then he just rushed in on, the day before. Where was Laumapi?
He had Umaga Jensen. Brian, you and I were having a debate about this because I'd sort of seen him a few games in the Hurricanes, and he had Umaga Jensen had a good season. Like he played well for Wellington. And
he's one I haven't really taken notice of.
I think he deserves to be in the squad. I wasn't expecting him to be starting. Well, he didn't start, but on the team sheet so early. But I think he definitely deserves to be in the squad. And I think he wasn't out there for long, but he had a couple of good runs and got an offload away to Coles, and I think he did what he was out there for, what he was meant to do. He played pretty well. But yeah, it's surprising to see Laumapi in the mix somewhere.
Surely he's injured.
Must be.
I think he is injured, but
yeah.
I thought I think he was. I'm not sure if he was injured when they picked. Was he injured when they picked the squad? Or they just
I feel like he's injured.
He must be.
Surely to not get a look at it.
They wouldn't throw a debutant in on 18 notice. It's just not the done thing. Not even in other countries.
Yeah, he must be injured.
Yeah, bound to.
He certainly proved his worth as a Manawatu. Man, he had some good games. Scored a lot of good tries when he wasn't selected, and everyone was shocked that he didn't make the squad. And then he came out firing like he was out there to prove a point. He played well.
I don't know much about this kid, but I'm hearing big things. Is he before you got on the call, Brian? I had noted to Spank that is Geordie Barrett the slowest winger we've had in 25 years?
Fuck, is he what?
This fucking guy, he's 2 feet taller than everyone else, but he's slow. People that Titavini Sivivatu size.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of I know he's had a good season, Geordie Barrett at fullback. I'm not a fan of him on the wing. I don't know if I'm a fan of him at all. Actually, I'd much rather see someone like Will Jordan, who's been on fire all Super Rugby. For me, he's been the player of the season. He reminds me of Daniel Carter in a different way. That type of class.
Wow.
He should be the guy that they just chuck in. I know they've got this thing there, hey, we bring a new guy in and we want them to come off the bench for a while and just massage them into it. I think he's the type of guy that he should be starting and get him in there now. I'd love to see him starting again. These times where you have the back line looking like shit and they can't do anything. Very much like the draw last week. you put Caleb Clark in there, and that adds a bit of spice. You had Will Jordan in there too. I think we've got the makings of a classic backline again. At the moment, they needed that bit of X factor with Caleb Clark, or else it was just nothing again. It's just shoveling the ball side to side. But he's the type that can, to me, he's that good. He's that good that he was always pretty good, but I didn't really rate him. And then he came in this season, and I was like, oh my God, this guy is like head and shoulders above any other back that we've got. Attacking back. To me, he's that good, and I just can't believe that he's not starting. It's insane to me. Say that again?
What's he got? Does he have a massive sidestep like a Cullen, or is he super fast, or he just slips defenders like a Conrad Smith?
Yep, all of the above, right. And he's able to pull off big moments regularly at key times. I don't know if you watched that North and South game. He came through and won it in the last second with a big play. But that's the type of play that he'll come up with all the time, all season. He can tackle. He's fast. He slips tacklers, offloads. He just does it all, and he does it at ease. He looks like he's someone that's just got heaps of time, knows what he's doing, not under pressure. Magic. And you don't see those players come along too often. They have to mould them, and hey, we need 2 international seasons to give them some test caps, and hopefully they come through. I think he'll do it from test 1. I think he's that good. I think it's a joke that he's not even in the squad at the moment, or even in the 23. I would drop McKenzie for him to at least get him off the bench.
Okay. So I haven't thought much of McKenzie so far.
Yeah.
He's coming back a little, so maybe they're massaging him back into his role.
Yeah.
You were saying that you'd rather have him than McKenzie. That's a big call. Maybe I should go and watch some highlight reels.
I would drop Geordie Barrett for Will Jordan, without even
fucking anyone.
Yeah, without thinking twice. He would be in the back 3, and
especially with no Bridge.
Yeah, especially with no Bridge, then he's your classy winger. You've got Caleb Clark as your steamroller.
Caleb Clark's making a big push to kick Bridge out, to take his spot.
You'd think he has. You'd think it'd be hard not to now, unless they do this silly thing where, hey, against this team, we think Caleb Clark should play, but then another team, they have George Bridge play against England. Who knows? But you'd think Caleb Clark's got it, surely.
He's Caleb Clark. Because Bridge is out for, what do they say, predicting around 6 months or something. And then Caleb Clark's, that's a long time. That's quite a few games. I know, the late season with COVID and Christmas is coming up, and he'll be in there now for the rugby championship. And if he plays well for the Bledisloe, the rugby championship, Bridge could be take a while, possibly struggling to get back in as a starter.
Oh, what happened to Sevi Reece? Why did they drop him and let him go back to play Mitre 10 Cup?
I think it's just a lifespan thing again. He's just, there's this big rotation of wingers, and I guess that's where All Blacks are lucky, and it's a curse that they've got this big rotation of really good wingers at any one time, and someone has to be really, really on form. And at least he's done something to play up in the background. They're just simply not giving him the. I guess I've just simply rated that. Yep, he's George Bridge is better than him, and Caleb Clark is better than him. And surely they have to rate Will Jordan better than him. Because Will Jordan was brought in the squad, wasn't he? As soon as so I guess they rated Will Jordan better than him. So
I thought Reece was injured, but then they released him to go play for Tasman. So, I thought that was really weird because Reece hadn't been. I didn't think he'd been playing that poorly. That they would just not consider him.
I thought they released him to play, and then, with the possibility that Geordie Barrett could maybe play centre to cover the Rico injury, and they bought Umanga Jensen instead of having Sevi Reece come in as cover. Yeah. And then Geordie covered the other position. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. It worked out okay in the end, but the experience over whatever Umanga Jensen brought in, perceiving what he was going to bring, I thought that Reece probably would have been the smarter, safer option.
Conspiracy theory is that Plumtree is the Wellington. What is it? Wellington coach.
Wellingtonians.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, I'll just go with the Peter Umangi. Had a pretty good season for us. Slap him in there. Yeah.
Umanga's in his ear. Just is the lack of competition going to set the other teams, other international teams, not ours, but tier 2 nations and some of the other tier 1 nations that are in Europe, especially Italy, is it going to set them far, far behind us? Like when we
go, Brian, because I've already talked about this. So you talk.
When we think about how it was in the 90s, in the early 2000s, there was a massive gap. Those nations were far, far behind, and they've done well to close that gap. But this, depending on how long this lasts, this could maybe even further than it was before.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I guess it could do, eh? Like, they haven't really thought too far beyond the season, apart from, hey, when do we play the Springboks again and when do we play the English? But, if you're looking at teams, I guess, is that what you're asking? Just teams like Italy and,
Not just teams like Italy, but, any team that's in and around the Italian sort of ranked maybe 12 in the world. That isn't getting the game time. I'm talking USA and Canada as well.
France.
The nations that have worked really, really hard to get where they are. And
you're not going to get the game time against the big teams anymore because that's going to be reserved for against the big nations to play each other. What used to be a right now isn't a right. We're not going to play. South Africa's not going to play for 2 years, basically, since the last World Cup. Yeah, you're right. That will go backwards. Yeah, definitely.
Are they playing each other? Like, is the Curry Cup going ahead, or?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Any game.
South Africa's South Africa hasn't committed to not playing anyone for 2 years, have they?
No, I guess they're not going to play for the rest of this season unless they do something with Europe. But they're sprinkled with COVID as well. So I don't know what the story is with the Springboks, but now that they pulled out with the Rugby Championship, I guess when's the next time they play? Which I guess would be either Super Rugby or. But the next time they play international rugby is probably the same time the All Blacks would play again next year, which would effectively be, close to 2 years anyway.
Too, that when South Africa won the World Cup, they were looking, because they were making sounds like they wanted to get out of the Rugby Championship. And the reason why they wanted to do that was to join the Six Nations and to create a new competition there, because that's where the money is. The money is in Europe, England, France, Japan. All the TV money, that's fucking big money. If South Africa wants a piece of that pie, they need to be playing in that competition. It's not like you can just send your players off to the Guinness Premiership and you get that TV deal. So I thought that when they were making noises of pulling out of this Rugby Championship season, I thought that it might be a little bit of a sneaky thing where if we sort of piss these guys off or don't do this in good faith, then maybe it looks better to the IRB over there in England, who they want to push more money our way, but they need us in their competition. So if they piss off the Sanzar unions enough, even though they're part of it, that they can just kind of, when this all blows over, they can just kind of mosey on up to the Northern Hemisphere teams and get themselves into that competition without any fuss. That was just a small conspiracy theory of mine.
Yeah.
But if they're looking for that money, the money is up there. It's not down here. The competition is down here.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sad state of affairs, actually. Like, I never was. I kind of become bored a bit of Super Rugby. And knew they needed a change, but that change wasn't, hey, get rid of South Africa. I'm not sure what the change was, but I'll miss seeing the Springbok. I mean, it's not the Springboks they haven't pulled out of the Rugby Championship, have they? It's just Super Rugby that's pulled out, but the international, I'm pretty sure the Springboks are staying in the Rugby Championship for now.
They're still going to be in the Rugby Championship, just not this year.
Yeah.
I think this may set a precedence for.
Yeah.
You didn't try hard enough to make it work or whatever. And
yeah.
They wouldn't.
I much rather would have seen this year. It's been nice to play Aussie, but there was something touted, before this started that there's potentially a three test match series against the Springboks over here. And I much rather would have seen a 3 test match series against the Springboks than 8 other matches this year. Like if I had the choice, that's what I wanted to see. World champions versus the All Blacks in a 3 test match series. And we beat them in the 3 test match series. And I think that would have been exciting to see. I'm excited to see the All Blacks play Aussie, but I think that's what's missing nowadays is a 3 test match series. Just simply a 3 test match series.
It means something.
Yeah, it means something. Like Rich, it's always said to me that Richie McCaw never got the chance to play a 3 test match series in South Africa and beat South Africa. Hey, they beat South Africa plenty of times in the Tri-Nations. Hey, 1 or 2 games over there, it was all good, but it was never the Fitzpatrick moment of banging down. Hey, we've just beat South Africa the first time in history in a 3 test match series over there, and I think it's really sad that Richie never got the chance to do that. They beat South Africa.
Man, that was 24 years ago, 96.
Yep.
It was, Marshall sticking his arms up in the air, celebrating. They were so exhausted. Zenny, they were so tired that Zenny, the workhorse of the team, was just dead on the ground, like just not moving. He was done. He just lay down and didn't want to get up. It was bad. That was a good game too.
Yeah. Yeah. Why can't they do that again? It's ridiculous that it's not. Obviously, it's TV rights, and hey, we've signed this deal and etc. But, ugh.
Last thing I'll just say before we sign this off is that one of the good things that I noticed was, and I hadn't seen it, but you won't have it over there, Lucas, but over here on Sky they have the Sky Player Cam, and they have like a camera only on one player every game, and you can go to a certain channel if you want, and you can just watch that. And then they've got the regular game in a small box in the corner of the screen, and you're just watching the camera on this specific player. And I hadn't seen that, but this week the camera was on Caleb Clark.
Last week,
and you can go. What's that?
Last week it was on Adi Savir, because All Black's YouTube channel puts it up in a highlights form on their YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. So I watched the Adi Savir one last week.
You should go on and you watch the YouTube highlights of Caleb Clark. Not obviously there's the try and there's some bumping runs and he's bumping people off and there's amazing footage on there. But one thing I hadn't noticed, and it wasn't on the main screen, on the televised screen, was when Matt Tamua went down in the game and he was injured. Like he did a kick out outside swing. I think he
did the kick the first time, and then he tried to make a tackle the second time, and that's when he went off.
Oh, yeah, I think it would have been when he went off, and he was crouched down, and he was obviously in a lot of pain. There was a trainer there, sort of, with him, and Caleb Clark was on the wing, and they were going over to a huddle, I think. And while he was down, and he walked over to Matt Tamua and put his hand on his shoulder and kind of gave him a pat on the shoulder, and I think that's a pretty good show of class from someone on debut who could have just ignored it and walked straight past him. And I also think it's probably a good reflection of Dave Rennie coming into the squad and turning that from Michael Cheika, where there's this level of like the Australian cricket team had, where there was that level of sort of like maybe, and the players probably, obviously the players maybe not all on board with it, but there was a level of like arrogance sort of to them where, oh no, we don't want to come into the sheds, and we haven't had that with Australia for a long time, and now it's all changed, and they're all having a beer with them in the sheds, and they're all sort of talking and taking photos with each other, and I think Israel Adesanya was in there taking photos with them, and There was it was just a social kind of thing, which is, I think that's kind of why rugby, especially in this country and the club rugby, is so good, because everyone talks about the game's so good because you can run into each other and smash each other all day, and then go and shake each other's hand, have a beer with them, and talk about the game. And I think that's probably a pretty cool thing that's happening with New Zealand, Australia. It's good to see finally, after like years of this, and the Caleb Clark thing was a nice touch, but it's a reflection of sort of how things are changing between the two countries.
Good level of respect, though. Sportsmanship. Yeah. Like, we've always had good sportsmanship, but also, with being the most sought after brand, the most sought after team in the world, they want to beat us so bad that sometimes it feels like, we get disrespected, or they get disrespected. They feel as if they're disrespected, and then that sportsmanship kind of goes away. And I'm glad to see it. Like, I don't like all this dirty play. I don't like people fucking pulling jerseys, like the whole TJ Perenara thing. And there was another one in the first half where one of our guys grabs some headgear, and then a dude grabs the back of his jersey. Like, it was a little bit stupid and very unnecessary. Like, if you're just late.
I'm on sort of that. I'm on sort of a mix of that. Like, I don't mind. Like, I think in that game, there was. I kind of personally, for me, I kind of enjoyed the niggle between Perenara and Nick White, where there was like some talking, and then Perenara bumped off Nick White along the sideline and kind of said, I got you after you talk it up, and then I kind of won that. I think the thing at the start, there was some pushing and shoving. Dane Coles was in there, obviously. I think there's a bit of, it's good, I think, during the game to have a little bit of that in there, a little bit of niggle and a little bit of, hey, come on. But that's just me. I think it's good to see some of that in the game. But afterwards, it's also good to see them shaking their hand, having a beer, rather than going different ways.
Were you guys throughout the game while it was going on, or before the game, Brian?
Just say that again. I missed you cut out a little bit.
Were you nervous during the game, or did you? How we always usually feel like, this is about the time we'll turn it up and we'll kind of run it in the last 20. Were you nervous at all?
I think I always felt we'd come away with it, but not like
not
the same, not the same as in the past. Like in the past, there was no worry at all. We could go behind at halftime and you'd still be pretty confident we'd win. I think we're only obviously when. I don't know. I still felt we would win, but definitely not with the same type of confidence that we had in the days of, just even, the McCaw era, where we could easily drop behind even with half an hour to go, 20 minutes to go, and still be pretty confident that we'd come away and win. I felt if we drop behind on the scoreboard at any point in the game, especially in the second half, we probably would lose it. That's kind of how I feel about the team at the moment, just because they're new, that they haven't really been tested in really hard situations, which is fair enough. It's a new team, but that's kind of the stage where I think they're at. Hey, they did really, really well. Yeah. But it's not that mature team that's gone through a whole lot of, tough games to grind their way to wins. And I don't think even Henson's last couple of years that they had that team either.
If you recall, the game against the Springboks when Scott Barrett got sent off for the shot to the head, it was right before halftime, and I remember you texted me straight away and you were like, we're fucked. And I think we may have still been ahead, or we're only just behind. Like, the game was still a contest at that time, and you're just like, nah, we're fucked. Like,
it ruins the game. When someone gets sent off, it just ruins the game. But I think if someone gets sent off, it changes the whole thing of the game, the whole run of the game.
Especially someone in the tight five. I mean, Scott Barrett's he's no Brodie Retallick or no Sam Whitelock, but he's a solid player and he's got a big engine, and he would have made a difference. Like, there is no two ways about that. just don't have a player like that. Fuck.
You'd almost want to consider a rule where instead of a red card, that person went off, was replaced by another player, but they gave away 7 points, a penalty try. It'd be interesting to give the captain the choice. Let's say a rule where, hey, this is a red card offence. Would you like this player to be sent off? Or would you like this player to be sent off and replaced with another player, so they've still got 15 players, but you get 7 points for it? Or do they get sent off for 10 minutes? Like, just that type of thing. Yeah. It'd be interesting to change that up because I get the feeling that it'd be even more painful for the person offending to give away basically a penalty try. Yeah. 7 points. Can you imagine that in a tight test match?
Imagine if it was 15 points or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That means red card offences would take, to that next level, especially if it's a close game.
Yeah. What do you think of Graham Henry calling out Foster, saying he wasn't the right man for the job, and Dave Rennie should have got the job? Bearing in mind, Graham Henry was on the panel.
He was on the selection panel.
He was on the panel.
Hey, man.
So it must show how much he thinks of Scott Robertson.
Well, I didn't think Robertson was ready. He's only had, a couple of seasons in top flight rugby, and I didn't like him as a player. That's probably what it is, to be honest. I wasn't the hugest Scott Robertson fan when he was a player, so that may have been carryover for that. I'm sure he's a good coach, and he gets the added pressure of coaching Canterbury too. Like, he's coaching one of the better teams going around in provincial rugby and in Super Rugby. Over a long period of time, Canterbury has been the best team.
What? Bar none. I will say this one thing for Robinson. Blackadder, during his whole period, they were pretty average. For a Crusader team, they didn't win anything. I think the closest they got, they made a final and lost to the Blues. Not to the Blues, sorry, the Waratahs. But as soon as Blackadder left, bang, 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 they start winning, and he brings in a whole big bunch of new players. And I guess bearing in mind, Blackadder had, he had the McCaws, the Carters. He had a pretty good selection. Bearing in mind, I guess at that stage, Richie was playing half season, so was Carter. But I guess that's one thing I respect with Robertson. Boom, he came in, he breeded a whole lot of new players, and they won. They kept winning.
And he did some fucking breakdancing.
Yeah.
He brought breakdancing back to the rugby field. There's nothing
one thing that's really good with Robertson is that I'm just trying to look it up which team it was, because I can't remember. Maybe you guys know, but before he took over the role of the coach for Canterbury, he had to, I don't know if he'd applied for the role, and then but basically he had to go and do a second division, like a second division. They asked him to go coach a second division team.
Oh yeah, do a bit of it.
And sort of get involved with them and see how he did with them, and then they would, like, obviously keep him in mind for other positions. And I'm thinking, I'm just trying to look it up. I can't find it, which is really frustrating. But he coached the team in it wouldn't have been like North Canterbury or South Canterbury, but it was like one of those teams that he was. It was like, I can't remember the name of the town, but he was coaching in this
Club rugby.
Club rugby,
oh, yeah.
And he had to go and coach them and sort of prove himself. And I heard what he did was he went into the province, to the area, to the town, and he was he got them all together, and he basically did a bunch of stuff with them in the community, and like got them all to know about really community focused, and got them involved with a bunch of stuff in the community, and then so by then when it was game time, he could team talk to them and say, listen, see this community, see how much support you've got in this region. They're here for you, and they want you to do well. So you got to do well for them. They're here to support you, and you're there. And this team that he coached hadn't done very well, and they dominated. And I think they won the division. and everyone was like, "Wow, this is unbelievable!" And then he kind of proved himself there, and I think and then he went to Canterbury, but I think he did a lot of. This was from an interview from I think it was Wayne Smith was talking about it, and Wayne Smith had been following him and saying, "Hey, if you want to do this," then he was kind of in that board where picking him or not picking him or whatever to go up to Canterbury and he said, go and test yourself with these other teams and we'll see how you do. And he was kind of acted like as a mentor for Robertson. And I mean, obviously Wayne Smith is like one of the best minds in the game, so pretty good mentor to have. And then he went off and did this, but he used his own technique. And I think that's a real strength for Robinson is that he has that. That's why the Crusaders, one of the reasons the Crusaders are so good is that he just brings that team environment and really makes them bond, really good at bonding the team together and getting them on the same page and making them realize why, when you're a kid and you're playing rugby and you're doing it because it's fun. And then that kind of fades as you go through the divisions and professional. Sometimes that probably can fade, but he's really good at instilling that back in the players and making it fun. It's a real fun thing to be doing, and you're doing this because you enjoy it rather than other things that creep into the game.
That's awesome. I hadn't heard that story before. Love it. That is a brilliant way to get into the community and really get your players to play for more than themselves. So good on you, Razor.
Yeah.
All right, brothers. Well, thanks for the review. I appreciate all the input and the insight, and we'll definitely be doing this again.
Cool shit.
Yeah, that was fun.
Letting us on.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, mate.
The next time we'll be wanting to review that one.
Yeah, keen.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks a lot, boys. We'll see you soon.
All right. Shortly. Later, Spank.
Later, man.
See you, bye.